Hey everybody, welcome to episode 83 of Tactical Crouch. That's right, it's your week 5 recap show. I'm KickedTripod, joined of course by Yiska and Volamel, and we've got a packed show for you. Before we get started though, a couple of quick things. Show is completely supported by our patrons. Go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch if you want to support it. We've got a lot of great people supporting the show. And we're going to be posting the pre-show and post-shows because we just hit another milestone. So, yay. Milestone! So, thank you so much. I believe we've got another one coming up at $500 a month. So, thank you so much for doing that.
Nice.
That's pretty badass. Other than that, I think that's it. Let's get started. The recap show this week is brought to you by our patron producers, Battle Crab, Pin, Lulshin, Charlie L, Audio Compass, Pork Chop, Sammy, Kasha67, Coochie Kopi, and Salsa Boy 91. Thank you all so much for your support. We love you. We'll be talking to you soon. I can guarantee it. All right. Week 5 is in the books, lads. It was the best of spectating. It was the worst of spectating. It was the best of dive. It was the worst of dive. It was the best of EMPs. It was the worst of EMPs. You get what I'm saying? Very polarizing, I think, week. And we're going to actually kind of rehash, if you weren't here for the post show or you're listening on audio or on YouTube for the VODs, we had kind of an interesting discussion about just the overall quality of play and whether it's good or bad for the scene overall. And we're going to basically rehash that whole conversation and have it again because it was good. I think we got to flesh out a lot of our thoughts and ideas on it, but it's something that we want everybody to hear. And so let's maybe start it this way. So, Joe, back when hero pools were announced, I would say you were the most vocally against hero pools out of the three of us. I think all three of us had very strong criticisms of it. But I would say you were the most vocal of it. And one of the big reasons cited, I think, for everybody on the show was the quality of play would go down.
Sure.
And overall, it would hurt the
integrity.
Would you say competitive integrity is it's not like cheating, but it's just
it lowers it.
Yeah, it lowers at least the skill or the preparation, the game outside the game. And do you think that is what we saw this weekend?
Without a doubt. I think even with more information coming out, players and coaches talking about how and what was being played and the vast opinions on what was good and what was bad and who is good and who is bad. The level of play is significantly decreased. After watching it, however, I do think that there is a way for us to return to a strong level of play. We just have to accept that it'll take time. But without a doubt, I would agree that the level of play this week compared to weeks previous was obviously lower. Was it more entertaining? That's an objective question that it seems like a lot of people have a positive reaction to, which is good. If this is supposed to be integrating more people into watching the game and being more excited about watching the game, this does that, but at the cost of having a competition. And that was what this was billed as a competition. It's a league, it's a championship, it has all of the markings of a competition with just these constant roadblocks and changes being tweaked to make it less of a competition. That's kind of where I'm at with it right now. If I can Michael Bay my brain and just turn it into Transformers mode, then yeah, I probably would be able to watch it and enjoy and just kind of enjoy it for enjoyment's sake. It's just kind of getting to that point or changing how to think about the game, because it's very, very different. But we'll see. I don't know. But yeah, to answer the question, yeah, lower levels of play, not super enjoying for me, not super enjoyable.
So, see, I kind of had a different experience here. So I said this in the pre-show. I have to kind of watch Overwatch League with two hats. One is my like casual, smooth brain. I'm just like chilling, keeping an eye on the WoW auction house while I've got it open over here, and just kind of like, oh, cool, this is fun. And then I actually like try to like sit down and analyze and look at the plays and you know try to be Joe or Yiska for an hour or so, and then get really tired and hungry and then lose interest. And the spectating experience, I think, for me, and I think for a lot of people who aren't using an analytical lens or don't have just a natural tendency towards like an analytical strategic lens when watching esports, I think really enjoyed it. I had a lot of friends who they play quick play, or they just try to get their loot boxes every week in arcade, and they tuned in this week and really enjoyed it. And one of the worst things I would say about Overwatch's acceptance as a mainstream esports, one of the biggest obstacles has been the barrier to entry for a spectator. Would you agree?
I would. I just don't agree with where you're going with it.
Yeah.
I just don't agree with the next part.
So the what I was getting on Twitter is that the more hodgepodgey, less set up play style made it more fun and interesting, and you felt like you had a grasp of the story of the fights a lot more than just kind of an explosion of deaths on your feed all at once.
I think I agree with the first part of that sentence and vehemently disagree with the last part. Dive in general and this lower level of play that is very apparent makes it a very difficult to tell who is actually winning. Case in point, look at Paris Philly, last map Oasis. It was tough. It was back and forth. It was very fun, but it had no through line. You couldn't tell who was winning. And that's what I believe people are actually getting at, is this was more fun. And I completely, like, again, I can't argue with what you enjoy, right? Like, that's just a subjective question. But I think in a lightly objective way, it's tough to kind of say that there was a more clear throughput with how messy these games were.
I guess I don't mean clear throughput as much as I do like you're following the tracer and things are dying where they aren't.
Sure, yeah, it's very dynamic.
Like, it's very dynamic, and I think it's kind of linear in that. I mean, the deaths were straddled a lot, so like the fight went on for like 3 minutes or just something ridiculous, right? And so, but you were able to kind of follow this. In this case, they were doing a lot of spectating on, I believe, the Tracer and the Winstons.
Sure.
And you were able to just kind of follow where the action was going, and
it always puts you in the action
or not. Yeah. Versus like always having to watch the top right and top left and look for the Discord and was that a hack? Was that not? Are they frozen? And having to take a lot of these off-screen cues, or not off-screen cues, but off gameplay cues to the actual state of the fight. I think that is where people felt a little bit more. I want to say safe to spectate or whatever would be, the right term. A little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's not. You don't need any kind of like extra knowledge about the game. You don't need to have played the game to watch somebody shooting someone. You kind of understand that. You've played any number of, if you've played your first game or if you've only seen games, you've probably experienced some sort of, shooting a shooter title, an FPS, third-person shooter regardless. If you shoot somebody with a gun, usually they take damage and die. And that's what we saw. And that's what people can relate to. And that's what kept people engaged. They didn't understand it any better, but it was trumped by the entertainment.
I think the illusion was stronger that they understood what's going on. But if you think you follow the tracer and the tracer gets the kill, you now understood why that kill happened.
No.
You're out of shit out of luck, guys. Like, you really didn't. You had no idea what press the Zen or whatever in that zone.
How did the opportunity for Tracer to get that kill happen?
Yeah.
That's how the game actually works. Not like, oh, well, they killed them, so therefore they're better. Well, obviously not, but
yeah,
it's still very difficult to kind of understand, but it makes the ending more fun, more interesting, to some people. And maybe a little bit more clear, and just in terms of how it happened. I shot my gun, they died. Sweet. I don't need to know about, and again, speaking from the fans' perspective or a general fans' perspective, they don't need to know how that happened, or maybe they're not interested in how the Widowmaker got that angle. They just want to see that they did and they got the kill, and it's exciting. Wow, cool, pulse bomb. Those are all engaging aspects of Overwatch.
The thing is, that has nothing to do with hero pools, by the way. No. Absolutely 0% to do with hero pools. Like,
expound on that.
What you're saying is, I like dive. I do too. Hard enforce that, and let's play that for a month, let's say.
So I want to dive down, because I have a feeling this is something that viewers are going to get caught up on.
Yeah.
And misquote you on. And so this is where I stop it and we discover this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So hero pools you're saying hero pools has nothing to do with the fact that we saw this more exciting kind of loose play style. You're saying that's just dive.
I mean, the loose playstyle and the less perfect playstyle, that is the reason for hero pool. Like the lack of quality. That is hero pools. The fact that we're playing dive and tracer and these fun aim heroes is not or let's say that is a symptom of something that could be derived from something completely else, as that's in hard buffing dive before the season, for instance.
Yep. You can arrive
buffing
to
Winston
week 5's meta in other ways. Hero pools was just the unintentional way that Blizzard kind of guessed that it would. But somehow I don't think
and in that sense, by the way, amazing meta.
Yeah.
For hero pools to be introduced. I think people just like someone points at the moon and they mistake it for the finger. That is pure. It's not even luck. It's incompetence of teams that we saw dive.
Yeah. So, and we're going to discuss, I think, probably after this about, how the meta was kind of figured out to be something even slightly different, not slightly different, very different. But going to this though, do you think though that Blizzard, you say this was an unintentional meta by Blizzard, but it was also, I feel like, a very intentional circumstance to say, you know what, let's just throw caution to the wind here and say, you know what, some week dive is going to end up being a thing. Another week,
I can't disagree with that statement.
Like, I don't think that. Man, what's the right way to say this? I think that Blizzard knew the chaos they were putting the meta in, and purposefully did so anyway.
Yeah.
And I think the argument that this meta was a coincidence could be made every week. And I agree that some metas are going to be more fun than others, but it's better than a stale, unfun meta. I think as Blizzard's...
Sure. I don't think very few people would disagree with that statement. I think it's just the vehicle that they've chosen to get to not having stale, unfun metas is what we're disagreeing on. Right. It's very difficult for me to disagree with it. Like, it's not unintuitive. They didn't do it on purpose. Well, yeah, of course. Like, you can say that for everything. Like, they knew they were going to get dive. They knew they were going to get bunker. They knew they were going to get, something that was similar to goats. Like, yeah, of course. When you just throw things up to chance, anything's possible. But I don't think they knew that this is what people actually want. This in particular, this part of the pie, this specific hand of cards is what people are actually interested in.
So you think that people want dive? If I could oversimplify,
sure.
And I think this is more for Yiska specifically. Are you saying that in your mind that's what the general people want is dive?
I mean, they wanted to see DPS heroes that actually aim.
Yes.
Like in terms of that. And they wanted to see something new that wasn't GOATC or wasn't the playoff meta. And if those two components would have been entailed in that, novelty and these fun characters, then everyone's happy. I agree, guys. Like,
okay,
shocker, but I actually agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say, because when dive was a thing, after long enough, nobody was happy about dive. And same with goats. And we've even had people saying, I want goats back. And it was just like, it's a constantly, the only thing that I think the competitive Overwatch community has been consistent about is disliking stale metas more than anything else. And I think a lot of people are like, but not at the expense of quality of play. But it's really difficult. How often can you change a meta and still maintain a high quality of play? Probably stage wide, right?
I like that question. Yeah, I like that question a whole lot more than just saying, well, heck if I know, let me just roll some dice.
Every week?
Yeah.
Come on, Sideshow. See you later, legs. Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't think any of us would disagree that, the lottery aspect isn't like entertaining, right? That's an entertaining piece of content to see Sideshow pull 3 Soldier 76 tokens. I don't like how long it
takes them to actually load the thing up.
Sure.
Three times.
That could be done in advance. There's refinement there, but that specific piece of content is fun, and that's probably the only silver lining that I'm really seeing with this, unless something like comes from it, unless there's like a flower that blossoms from like the corpse of hero pools once it gets removed, right?
Yeah.
If and when it ever does, right? We don't know. But it's just like a very incoherent vehicle to get to a solution that I think that Blizzard is very capable of doing.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, Joe, I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but I feel like when we discussed the announcements of hero pools, you just said, hey, if we just left it at aggressive meta targeting balancing, we would have the same or better same or better system.
Yeah, we would get the variety. We would get a little bit more parity, because again, I do think that in a vacuum, I think parity does equate to entertainment for some people, or for most people, I'd say. So having close games, everybody wants to see something close. Everybody wants to see like an actual competition, not just somebody get 4-0'd, right? It's very boring. Nobody wants to see that in most sports. Nobody wants to see a blowout. They want to see something close. They want to have some sort of hope. And that's what I think people tie a lot of parity to. So having aggressive changes and forcing cycles that you can control, and you can kind of like gauge or try to refine your Blizzard's own eye of what the people want. They want they want more aim heavy heroes. They want more FPS elements. They don't want, goats, just by and large. I think you could do that and refine down the system that you can that gets you to that point, that vehicle. Let's just call it that. You can make that vehicle better to get there on a more timely fashion. The more you do it, and just throwing caution to the wind and just leaving things up to chance, I think is detrimental. Yeah.
So at what point then is the ability to adapt quickly to an unanticipatable meta something that we start quantifying for in the creation of teams and development of players?
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So I think a big thing right now is you guys are discussing, and a lot of people discuss skill as the almost like the ability to be able to practice on a certain meta or map pool
Okay.
or whatever, and be able to achieve that at a high level. And that's like the ultimate form of skill, would you say?
The ability to practice.
I mean, for example, these teams had 5 days.
Yeah.
Right. So they had 5 days. They didn't have a ton of opportunity to practice, figure out the meta.
Sure.
Right. And that's going to be the same thing for the rest of the season, presumably. I think there's like a small one-liner in the thing that says that they can basically change hero pools whenever they want.
But let's face it, they're probably not going to for a while.
Not very likely. So
which I kind of agree with, but I think that's a tangential point. But continue.
So the ability, so the overall quality of games is lower because players aren't able to play the most skilled compositions in the most skilled ways.
Well, it's not just
not skilled composite, the most competitive,
the most optimal. Would you agree with optimal?
Optimal compositions in the most optimal way.
Yeah.
At what
I think. Okay.
So at what point then does the ability to quickly adapt to these metas get factored into determining these teams and players' skills?
I mean,
in 2 years, when we've filtered through that in contenders and have selected for those players. And of course, they are like hyper gifted individuals that like in Erster, for instance, like from the players are playing, this kid could basically excel in everything. It seems like
there are a few players that are like that.
He just has like the brain infrastructure and like the connection between his hand and his brain that's just like just works, you know. And Prophet is similar to that, for instance. But I think that's a completely different skill set, and that's not even a problem for me. Even though we have to say there was no real warning before the season. Like contracts were signed, everything was done deal. Teams had very often maxed out their budgets, and then it's like sup hero pools. Now
there's actually a feasible world. Like we joked preseason, like, well, are they really going to need a double hit scan? Yeah, there are metas that are double hit scan. There are metas that are double projectile now that are a lot more
double main
obvious,
tank, double flex tank,
So now we have to revisit that question of, well, nobody was notified and everybody was kind of done with their roster building. Would you actually have changed your roster in the way that you designed it, or maybe how many people you picked up, knowing that hero pools and the way that they were going to change things are going to be implemented? I think I would hear a lot of people saying that they would change how they approach the offseason. I know that immediately with hero pools, a lot of people were like, no, I don't think we change much. No, I don't think things would change. I think everybody would do the same things, but I don't. Yeah, I think the reality makes for a better, like, gives you hindsight, obviously, with the experience.
People wanted to build Formula One cars, and now we are in a mud race.
Yes. Well, it's not just a mud race. It's a triathlon. You have to be prepared for everything.
It's a mud race this week. And then
it's swimming next week, and then it's jiu-jitsu the week after. Sure, dirt bikes.
But even if we get the Formula One track, the Formula One car will still not be as fine-tuned to Formula One tracks as it used to be.
Well, and the driver of the Formula One car has been driving motorcycles and slogging in mud for the past 5 weeks, and now they get to come back to something that, I mean, arguably should still be better than what they've only been practicing 1 week on, but still, perfect analogy.
Also, how comfortable are fans with games, let's say 80% of the game being determined before the first minute of play starts? Do you feel good about that? Like, we're talking team building, we're talking strategy finding, we're talking roster decisions in terms of like who you're fielding. Like, most of the game is determined, and then the rest is like actual play in terms of like individual performance.
You think it was 80?
I don't think I agree with 80.
And they don't know that either, to be fair. Like, they can't know that. They can't know that like these teams scrimmed in a bubble where this was only played, so that's what they experienced within like the around 30 hours of scrim time that they had within a hero pool. I don't know if I agree with 80.
Yeah, that feels a little harsh.
That feels
In what sense?
hyperbolic.
Why not?
But
Why not?
because that's like a extremely odds-on favorite, and I don't think
That's essentially predetermined. Those are betting odds that you should take every time.
Yeah, those are like very
I mean, we
aggressive
can't
odds.
know what, but like I can guarantee you that the Outlaws having a better planning,
Sure.
and falling into the better meta situation for them this weekend helped them, right?
No, 100%. I think there are teams that have, benefits week by week, and there are teams that will fall, and some teams, like bad teams, that will get slightly better. But
that starts like from the preseason, right? Like nobody knew what happened, what would the tasks would be, right? Depending on what your roster looks like, and keep in mind that it's also very hard to throw your plans away and then redirect them during the season because of visas, because of budgets, because of or already existing contracts. That's 50% already, easily, team building of every match. Then you got to find the flexible coaches. The coaches got to have a good read on the meta that is going to happen. Maybe the scrim partner that you have needs to be quality. The players that you field, dude, there are coaches that went into the first match, looked at the comp that the other people are playing, went, there's nothing we can do, just lost. That will keep happening.
Right. I mean, and Houston was one of those teams, right, where they at least initially felt that Lucio Brigg was going to be the, or was it that was going to be the support.
Yeah, Lucio Brigg. They wanted to play like the super rush, front heavy, or like pressuring the front line. Brigg, Dream kind of called it goats. Everybody kind of jumped on that. Obviously, it's not, but it has similarities.
And I do want to back up just 1 second because there is some confusion in the chat. When Yiska says 80% determined, it's not in some way that is like known in the sense of like, because you're like, well, there was two upsets this last week. If it was 80% determined, you should get your predictions
get your wallet
correct.
out and start betting everything.
You should get your predictions correct 80% of the time. It's a little
the
bit
20% for me are how is the variance of the player that's playing on the servers, the overperforming, underperforming, and how much can coaches realistically change during the match in order to change the outcome of the match. And I don't think there's much that you can do like in whatever happens.
I'd be comfortable with like 60 to 70%.
Yeah, I think there are obvious
80 is a little bit high for me, but
there are obvious odds with hero pools and how they benefit certain teams over others. Like if a given style is strong, then a team that is favored with that style are definitely going to be at a higher advantage. If they have players that can play that style well, they're at a higher advantage. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that sentiment. I just maybe disagree with how much of an advantage they have.
I don't have
because it is messy.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers on this, but I would be willing to state that the second half of matches have been more competitive than the first half of matches. Would you agree?
I mean, what do you mean by competitive?
Closer.
Okay, so not better necessarily.
Yeah, so just like, and basically what I'm getting to this is post halftime, losing teams have been able to make adjustments to make their teams play better. And I think that feels a little bit more than that, 10 to 20% that you're putting to me.
The thing is, like the halftime, it's only a thing about the break length that changes it. The coaches have time during the match to analyze. They can talk to the players after every map, and they can make substitutions. The break is a little bit overrated as a breaking point of play. It seems like, and I'll also say I think people. Because this is an argument that is actually the crux of the arguments that I have. And it's really hard to prove from my side. But in my conception, like when people say people could theoretically prepare for all these meta situations, they think it is possible to cover all meta situations, or even let's say 80% of the meta situations that could arise from hero pools and balance changes. Nowhere close.
No,
not
you can't do
not
that.
remotely close. It's maybe 15% for the best teams or 30% for the best teams. It's so much more complex than covering all the heroes, which, by the way, is already a challenge.
Yeah.
But as we talked about, like, you know how many teams currently are breaking because a specific role is inopportune to shot call from that position on, where their shot caller was their position, then a new meta comes around, and then, just get players where everyone can shot call and also play very well.
Shot callers only.
There's like
Our
5
new
in the
open
world, my
division
dude.
team name, by the way.
Shot callers
The
only.
Tactical Crouch open division team. Shot callers only.
It's like that doesn't work. You can not feasibly prepare for everything that the game could realistically throw at you. Like some teams, like I understand. By the way, if you're telling me Washington Justice is underprepared, yes, I agree. They are not playing their odds well. They are like they prepare probably a third as well as a team like San Francisco Shock does. That's all fine and dandy. They are Shock are probably among the teams with like Shanghai and Philly who maximize their chances of getting a good meta the most. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the case that they can get every single meta that they want.
Yes.
I think, like, for me, the breaking point is if the best team in the league falls under 70% win rate, it's unacceptable. Like that, if we are digressing so much towards the mean that the best team in the league cannot win 70% of their matches, it's over. This game's legitimately rolling dice.
Well, I mean, it's already rolling dice. We've already rolled dice, but the thing that I don't think people are going to realize, and we're already kind of starting this, is that this game is incredibly social because it is so difficult to prepare for multiple different things. You're seeing Overwatch League teams coming in and having a bad look at the meta. Looking at Houston, looking at Justice, looking at, this week, people coming in, and now we're expediting that kind of that meta churn. You're going to see a double down on how social the game is, to a point where there should be a through line of a lot of heroes, if they're not banned, and a lot of the same styles as hero pools continues. And that's something that I kind of put forward in my drunken emotional rant. That things with how much they want things to change, the less they'll change. Because you're trying to force change and to adapt, because again, this is a game of competition. If I want to win, what's the best chance of me winning? Well, I have to come up with a style that is good at everything, or good across the board, and very rigid and very, I can't, there's not a lot of ways that you can ban me out. I want to play very broad. So what's that one style? That is going to be solved, and that's what's going to get played. The heroes may differ, but the style will feel very similar. What that is, there's a couple ideas, but I think that's going to be the end, not the end of hero pools, but like by the end of the season, if we still have hero pools intact, that's probably what you'll see is a very similar style. Not a ton of dynamic. It'll still feel very bland, I think.
We'll have
Also,
to see. So let's make sure that we remember this. Take your pictures, your mental snapshot, because that's a big thing, and we should revisit that at the end of the season. It should be one of the first things that we revisit. Is did hero pools and aggressive meta addressing balance changes actually keep things as fresh feeling as they did today or this weekend?
Yes. I think this was an anomaly.
It's very important. Like, even if we all agree that this is amazing and it's great and it's fun to watch, even if that was all the case, we got to ask the question, is this sustainable for the people working this environment?
Yes.
And I have serious doubts that this is true. I know it sounds like motivated reasoning because, like, I come from the point of view where hero pools is not an amazing feature. By the way, if you go back to the episode where it was announced, like, I was actually quite positive on the radicality of the changes, and I actually welcomed that that it was so radical. Maybe not the change in itself. Like, for me, like, let that experiment run a little bit longer, and then I would once again go for a radical change until we find something fun and sustainable. The thing is, that is really a perverse thing, especially I see in comment sections, also highly upvoted, where people say the only ones that have to work overtime are the bad teams, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
That's
you also. It is impossible to scale coaching staffs the way you think it does. It's not like you're getting like a meta discovery coach who then on the off day, while all the other coaches are like off and enjoying themselves, is sitting in his little cabin, takes in the moment Sideshow puts the blindfold on, he's just like calculating what should be run. It is it's a decision that everyone comes together, and most importantly, from trial and error. Nobody in the world can predict metas in the world. Virtually absolutely zero people can reliably predict metas based on what the games throw at us without seeing scrims and without trial and error. It is impossible. So what do you need? You need the players to play it. You can have an educated guess. I wonder if you can come up with them by yourself. You probably want to do that in the group discussion. You want everyone to be clued in. You want to have the idiosyncrasies of your team considered in those decisions, and the scalability is not there for that position. Truth is, everyone's working 75 hours over 6 months, and probably scaling up towards playoffs. Again, now we don't even know how long the season will last if we keep in the confines of this. It is not sustainable.
To clarify,
do we
real fast?
Real talk.
Real fast.
Okay, I gotta. Do we want someone to hurt themselves? Is that when we say this is not sustainable? Do we genuinely need to see like scars or something? I don't understand, dude. It's so obvious to me.
Like, it's another one of those things that it's okay if it happens to somebody if they're way over there and it doesn't impact me whatsoever. That's the fan mentality. I don't care if somebody leaves football with CT. I don't care that people could get injured and often do because it doesn't really impact me. It doesn't affect my life. But if you were a little bit closer to that person, if you were related to that person, if you were, that was your twin brother and or sister, you would care a lot. You've already seen a lot of people burn out. You will see a whole lot more burnout. To make you care, your favorite player probably will burn out. Look up a medical definition of burnout. It's not just some sort of casual gamer thing that gets thrown out. It's a serious thing that impacts you in a lot of different ways. I don't even remember where I was going. Real fast, just to clarify for Yiska, when he says 75 hours over 6 months, do you mean a week?
Yeah, a week.
Okay.
Of course.
So 75 hours a week over, months at a time.
And it doesn't stop there. Like during the off season, the coaches are just on as well. There's coaches definitely that take like a month off. There are coaches that never take a single day off the entire year.
And that's the system that esports is kind of built. But go on, John. Sorry.
So, and I didn't think that we would go down this road, and our timing is going to get totally by this. But we have to have the discussion now, because otherwise this is going to be kind of taken out of context and out of proportion. Because Yiska, you talked about the high rated. There was some other high rated comments about coaches discussing burnout and stuff, and there's still this mentality that, number one, you get to play video games for a living or analyze video games for a living. Therefore, 80-hour work weeks is not an actual true 80-hour work week.
They don't understand.
Can we address that first? Because we need to be very clear that, and I think presenting solutions to like high school sports, and I believe college sports, a few sports actually have like mandated off days. Like if the league implemented, hey, there can be no organized practices on Mondays, would that create a better, healthy system for the league?
Yeah. I would. I think that's the bold next step for esports in general is to limit the amount of time you can practice. That is going to be a tough pill to swallow, because for so long it has been unhealthy. It started in the early 2000s of people grinding and living unhealthy lives, having unhealthy relationships with, what is really their job, right? They're a competitive eater, they're a competitive gamer, whatever. Like, if you view it as a job, you wouldn't want somebody, a normal health professional, I would assume, probably wouldn't want you to practice, 10 to 12 hours a day, wouldn't want you to work 10 to 12 hours a day. So that needs to be mandated, or people will do it because, again, they want to be the best.
Well, in you hit on, I think what's an important point is that to be competitive in esports, it's if you're awake, you're competing in some way or another.
Yes.
And this was the same way for sports a long time. This was the same way and it's tough because we just talked about the highest level of competition and competitive integrity and always getting better, and having a day, like a dedicated day off, is an example of something that would, at least from a time investment perspective, hurt competition, especially short term, right? Because it's a whole day. It's a whole 24 hours you lose to practice, think about, whatever. So I understand the separation people make there. I think you would make the argument that long term it would be beneficial because you have players and coaches who are able to play the game longer, are able to sustain healthy lifestyles outside of it. But even then, when you look at like professional sports athletes and stuff, like yes, they're hitting the gym and they're putting in full 40-hour weeks plus traveling plus whatever, and it's probably more than 40 hours. Let's be real. And honestly, I think all three of us probably work more than 40 hours a week. Like when we count every little thing that would technically be counted under work.
Considered work. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to 2020. But there's the
thing is, just real quick.
Yeah,
I think the mandated days off come from a good place,
but maybe a bad
vehicle. It doesn't do anything.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
like people would just use that day. Like they would just sneak on their laptop or would get a notebook and think about the game. Yeah. What you got to do is build systems that disincentivizes or actually depressurizes the system. Because currently every hour you put in is so much more important than it was last season.
Yes.
When the meta is mostly figured out, every hour you put in is like, there's like what's it called? The
describe it.
Pareto number, like 80-20.
Yeah.
Like every hour you're not spending exploring what the meta could be, potentially scouting other teams and even talking to contenders teams they're scrimming against or whatever, or like, whatever you might do in order to increase your team's chances, it is vastly more important than it was. Now, again, this is not an argument I use in saying, we should have one wretched meta. I like that, but I also realize that you guys don't, and we got to find a compromise. And we got to find a compromise that works with professionals working in the scene. We got to find a compromise that works with viewers. By the way, also, I don't see the viewership increasing.
Granted, small sample size, to be fair.
Sure, but I don't think that will happen. We will see.
We got to look at the long tail for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's about building systems that take care of these situations. And also when a system is tried out and found impossible to sustain, then better switch it earlier than not. And also keep in mind, like we have ample of excuses now to go back on specific changes because of the tournament situation or the homestand situation that we have.
Yeah.
Like maybe we can figure something out, maybe mid-season break, let all the teams like play up to that point, have the same amount of games, and then figure out something else out, because otherwise we're cramping hardcore as well. So like in terms of that, like we have excuses to make radical changes again, I feel, because of that situation. So
Plenty.
I don't think we're locked in necessarily in the current situation, and I really caution purely based on the professional side of the sustainability side. I'm not trying to be a killjoy. Honestly, if there weren't these parts and it would just be okay, I don't enjoy the game as much anymore, I'd just go elsewhere. That's fine. Like I could just still write about ecosystems and whatnot. I wouldn't care that much, right? New game on the horizon, like that's not a problem. But I see the damage that it does, or potentially will do, especially once we get on the road for real.
Yeah.
Like to other continents, and it is rough. It is rough, and it is as rough as we predicted it would be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's only compounded on itself with hero pools. Now, you brought up an interesting thought that kind of slapped me and kind of made me smile. Is hero pools supposed to be taken seriously? Is this the solution in a very unintuitive way where we kind of just give up and go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to practice less because we don't know what to practice.
So we're just like, we have the World Cup attitude towards Overwatch League.
Maybe.
Ooh boy.
Maybe. If that's maybe that's a good thing to come of it. Maybe. And again, I don't think maybe the top teams, again, I think people have a very stark view of what it takes to win something, because to win again means you have to maintain that and do more. And to win again means you have to maintain that second win and do more than that. You have to compete against everybody else to stay at the top. It's not just you are the top. You have to do everything else everybody else is doing and more. That's how you stay at the top. That's how you win. It's not just some sort of blanket statement that you can regurgitate and they don't have to try to win. No, of course. Like they actually have to put in so much effort to be able to stay a top team and or repeat a championship win. So when people say things like, oh, well, the Shocker just like obviously the best, it's like, well, we don't know that. A, we haven't seen them. And B, the game has changed. We don't know if they're the best. That's what the season's for.
All right. I think we could go on for hours about this here. I know all three of us are really passionate, not just about the games, but the ecosystem, the health of the players, the health of the coaches, the health of the scene long term. And
we want this to be around.
Yeah.
And we miraculously also filled the time that we would lose otherwise while talking in depth about matchups that we now absolutely don't understand why they happened the way they did.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Debated.
So here we go. Let's talk about some of these matches. And the first one we are going to discuss is match number 1. The Toronto Defiant versus the Florida Mayhem. Just a reminder, the Defiant were on paper favored against the Florida Mayhem. Did not work out that way, though. One of the big things that we saw, big changes from Florida, is with Reinhardt being gone, we saw Fate start all 4 maps. So we finally got an extended look. Joe, you look confused. Did I say something wrong? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. I was just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. We got an extended look at Fate Yiska. How did you feel like he played?
Well, it's weird to have a feeling where like you were certain when the question was asked like that to like 70% degree, and now I'm like, how do I feel about this? Let's say he played well. Well, I think getting him on Winston is certainly it was expectedly going to be an improvement from him. Fate, of course, like one of the guys that always had like very high primal value. Also understands the character probably on a higher level than he does Winston, at least in the May meta, I would assume. And in general, it also seemed like he had some synergy with his Tracer player. And we saw some of those elements once again coming through. That some of these moments had some reminiscent elements where, like, for some ungodly reason, by the way, people played Zen when I can tell you all of Asia is playing Ana in that comp and think Zen is trash. And
but
like this coordinated dives onto Zen is quite interesting.
But isn't it weird that people or there's an idea that dive is trash?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's so social. You need to be able to test these theories because at their core they are theories. We can kind of X and O's and try to, you know, have some sort of game theory about it, but until you see it in practice, it gets difficult to either see how your opinion is wrong or your theory is wrong or how somebody else's theory is right.
To be fair, they played against those specific meta things and see those as evolutions. That doesn't mean they played against the meta played as by these teams.
Yes.
But I would also wager that, like, if Shanghai plays it, I feel like they play
100%. Like, it's a safe assumption to think that there's probably only one way to play the comp. But I think it's different with different teams. It's nitpicky, but I wonder if, you know, Shanghai's dive is as good or as the same as Philly's dive, or is Philly's dive the same as Seoul's dive? There's always those intricacies that make things slightly stylized, even though I wish we would be more stylized in Overwatch. But yeah, things are a little bit more, I think they're less cut and dry, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
In terms of Fate, did we even really see him play? I remember him playing a lot of Orisa.
I might be confusing him with a nut.
Did you ask if we've seen Fate play?
No.
This season?
I know we saw Fate play.
We saw him play, yeah.
I think he played a lot of Orisa, though. I'm looking through it right now. Yeah, he played a whole lot of Orisa. So basically, the only point that I really felt like I could make with this...
Probably mistaken it for...
No, you're good. Because there was a lot of... It was tough to follow. It felt like Toronto lost that game rather than Florida played, like, extremely well. Toronto, like, definitely underperformed. This was the game with, like, the bad EMP. Chris had his moments. I'll give him that, where he just kind of botched some of these dive defenses, but Toronto, by and large, didn't really perform well, especially with a theoretical buff.
So how much of that is then? Because I mean, we saw Toronto basically free fall last week, we'll say, and it was kind of an important thing for them to get a W here, to kind of say like, hey, last week is just a bad week. Obviously losing to Florida. How far have Toronto fallen at this point, do you think?
I think we'll see. I won't try to quote any kind of math graph names, but they'll probably peak again at some point. But as of right now, I think it's safe to say that they are in a valley. They have fallen and probably will fall. They will continue to fall. Like, their game against Justice next week is, I don't know. A, hero pools exist, and B, Toronto doesn't look all that great. They don't look coordinated. So if they can solve that within 1 week, then kudos to them. They can beat the Justice, but then can they beat London? Then can they beat the next team? And it's more of a check past this point. But yes, I think against this iteration of Florida, who in my opinion didn't really look all that strong. It's not great. It's not looking good. They have to change something. Or maybe they have changed something and have to revert back to it. Something's not working, something's not clicking, and I think it's going to take a long time to iron that out.
So, Yiska, I know you and I, and of course I'm going to draw a power rankings conversation out of this because it's totally a viable argument. You and I had both had Florida Mayhem above Toronto Defiant, I believe. Joe
sure did.
Joe did not, and he had the Florida Mayhem at 17 or 18, something very, very low, bottom 5. With this, do you think that the Mayhem are playing as a sub borderline play-in team, kind of like that gatekeeping team, or are they more playing down in Joe land?
Bottom 5 land.
I think they are artificially propped up by the metas that we're currently running. They are a team that is definitely benefiting from Brigade being meta for one. I think that's actually that's a lifeline. And then generally, if BQB can then also just play on a comfortable hero, they are also in a good position. I think generally, yeah, if I don't know, right now, yeah, I think next week probably, if I projecting what the meta will be, which I cannot do with any confidence, so I guess we say yes. I don't know. That's the type of conversation. I really don't know. I don't think there's a difference.
I mean, I think it's okay to qualify it. I'm not asking you to put money on it or anything, but you gotta eyeball it. You gotta go on feeling a little bit. We know that there's a lot that's out of your control, and that's okay. Well, we can argue if that's okay or not, but that's the reality that we're in. Because it's weird, right? Because Florida have wins against Toronto and Houston. Houston, especially at the first few weeks, I think we could say we're the second worst team in the league, for sure. Toronto, free falling. I mean, Joe, I don't think that you can make the argument that Toronto isn't a bottom 5 team right now.
Yeah, in their current form, they are not great. A lot of the if to bring it back to power rankings for a moment, a lot of the weight that I think certain teams were given had a lot to do with their depth. So that could factor into a Toronto return to form or a rebirth for them, but yeah, as it stands right now, they are probably a bottom 5 team of the teams that have been playing currently, and probably would have been a bottom 5 team if those teams were playing. So yeah, they're looking for a lifeline, and I don't know if there is a hero pool that benefits them extremely well. I hoped it was Dive. It's not. At least it's not right now. Maybe there are reasons for that. It's tough to say. But yeah, it's not looking great.
Yeah, it's tough. Both of these teams, I think, right now are underperforming, definitely to where I think that they should be. There's a lot going on, though. There's a lot of teams that are figuring out, I think, where they want to be, and Florida is one of those teams where, I
think they're pretty situated towards the bottom.
Well, it's kind of weird because obviously we have to largely ignore the Pacific teams, right? So you have Boston Uprising at the bottom. Toronto Defiant are 1 and 4. I don't know if I can put Florida below Toronto right now.
Say that again?
I don't know if I can put Florida below Toronto Defiant right now.
No. Yeah, no, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think you can.
So then you have Houston Outlaws at 2 and 5.
Which, yeah, that's not indicative.
Would you say Houston and Florida are sitting very similarly right now?
I think that I think I would agree, but I think that's less because I think that they're both equal teams, and more of I don't know exactly where to put Houston right now. Also, I don't know where to put any team right now because of hero pools. But if I had to, I think that at least with the resources in terms of who they have with Houston, I think I would put them 1 or 2 spots above Florida, near but not similar.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They're definitely kind of around there for sure. Okay, cool.
As of right now, could change.
So sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good.
Derail
there. All Gucci.
Let's talk about the second one. This is a surprising one.
Was it though?
Yes, I would say though. Yes, I would say a 3-0 against Paris, a team that you were
Sure.
making an argument was top 5, if not top 3.
Yep.
Getting swept.
Still think that, by the way.
By Houston, and I don't think you're wrong. And let's talk a little bit why Paris, I think, underperformed here. First and foremost, we did see a completely different look. Not a completely different look, but we saw a largely different look on Saturday than we did on Sunday.
Completely different.
I don't think we have any insider info on this. So just from your read on it,
really.
Did Paris intentionally plan and think that these heroes or these players would be better against Houston? So they're like, you know what? Let's put in No Smite. Let's take out Xe. Right? Ben Best. Sorry. Let's put in Ben Best. Let's take out Xe.
Sure.
And we think that gives us the best chance to be Houston, or did they misread the meta and then on Sunday go, you know what? We need Xe. We need to put in No Smite.
Yes. And I think that's exactly what happened, and that's probably going to continue.
Can we jump in? Because we need to activate chat because before we commit to any coffee mug readings, I remember that someone from Paris said that No Smite was supposed to play, but he was like, they were under, or he was under too much stress, and then decided against it or something like that. Maybe someone can dig up that comment. I don't know. I read it somewhere before the show, but I was eating. I'm not 100% sure. But
yeah, let's find it.
I mean, sure, that's fair, but I don't know that necessarily means that they planned for anything. Like something came up, they had to change the roster. That's fine. But I still think that they just didn't have a great idea of what people are running, how to run things, and they had a better idea with Fusion.
Chat said No Smite benched himself for Houston. Who's the chat? Due to nerves. Yeah, I read that somehow. And was it Avala who said that? Or Avala?
I know that she said that Hanbin was still sick.
Yeah.
Or Hanbin has been sick.
Yeah. Take that with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure I read
Hanbin
that from an
suffered
official
from the
source.
flu a whole week, even to the point he started having bleeding nose during the match. Send this boy some love. That was something that came out kind of after.
Yeah, after the weekend was finished.
Anyways, we'll kind of keep looking at it because there was Cruz said my whole team is ill and I'm the last one standing. Gonna be keeping my distance from Gray. So. Okay, so at the very least, and sorry we don't have these exact comments. The Paris, for whatever reason, we saw a very different look. So the two plausible things are there was a misread, like we thought we would have a better team or a better squad this way, and turns out that sometimes you just gotta let Xe. That's number one. Number two is. A lot of players weren't feeling very well, and so they put together what they thought a better look would be, and then people felt better by Sunday, and then they let Xe.
Also very plausible.
Both plausible, but either way,
tough to say which one. Yeah. But very different teams. If you remove the nameplates and put Paris Saturday versus Paris Sunday, I don't know that you'd be able to tell that was the same team.
Totally.
Different,
I mean, this was, I think, pretty shocking. Dream tweeted out his tweet that said like we have better
quite
players,
the narrative point.
Better players at all 6 positions. We're gonna win tomorrow. Was great, and they definitely delivered on it. I wonder, do you, Joe, think Houston would win against Sunday Paris? The Paris that beat Philadelphia Fusion?
I still think it would be close. But if we're going to assume that Houston has one game to prepare for and they get to prepare for a team that they get to see in advance, I still think that Houston has an edge. Fair. I think this specific meta favored them extremely well. I still don't know if Paris comes into this with different preparation. Like there's a lot of things that change, with this butterfly effect. So I still give this to Houston and again, I thought this was going to be a 5-game series, but Paris just showed up very weak.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising, huh? Like
A little bit.
this was the
Very
one that
decisive.
this was the match I would have put money on. Because
with those odds,
were,
how can you not?
The odds were almost 4-1.
80-20? Are you kidding?
Yeah. Just
Gimme.
yeah, it was something else.
I might even bet on Boston. Similar odds.
Oh yeah, so I
Hero
did.
pools
So
are-
I did my picks. I actually did pick. I ended up switching and picking Boston.
Yeah, I like. That's where we're at. Like that.
Yeah.
That's the thing right now, where there are going to be some crazy upsets that nobody's going to be able to see coming, just because of how much hero pools have changed things.
Yeah. So
it's wild. Good teams don't necessarily prepare or have the resources or have the manpower or our staff to be able to do everything the best. That is a question that everybody has to answer now or has to reevaluate. The good teams should in general continue to do well, but it's a variance. There's so much more variables in hero pools right now.
What's made a good team in the past doesn't necessarily, and this is something we discussed, doesn't necessarily make them a good team right now.
Yep.
You know, if
we have to reevaluate what is good, which teams do it well, and then test the hypothesis. Like it's not dismissive to say the system is reset or we have to soft reset, but it's a reality of the environment that we're in. Things have reset, things have changed. It'd be no different than a patch change coming in and saying, hey, maybe this is the better comp. If this is the better comp, then which teams are good at that comp? Sometimes it's not just the best team of the last comp. I think it's a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm talking smack to chat right now for no reason whatsoever. Yeah. Boston. Let's talk Boston Justice since we're there.
Stripper bow.
Yep. So Boston did not overtake
Boston
the Washington
sucks.
Justice. So they're coming at us with largely this double main tank, or not double main tank, but whatever, Orisa Sigma, if you want to call that main
double
tank
shields.
or not. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. This very double shieldy, kind of slow moving, difficult to engage composition. And they still almost, there's a few points where they could have actually kind of walked away with. This was a 3-1 that could have easily been a 3-2.
Yeah.
Could have easily gone the other way. Like this was not a good win for Washington, in my opinion.
It was not a good game.
It was just not a good game in general.
Oh.
And funnily enough, we called on Corey last week. We actually got a lot of because we didn't go on for 20 minutes about how Corey could play Hanzo.
We mentioned it, guys. I don't know. We talked about it.
We mentioned it.
looked
Guess how
at
much
my
Hanzo he
comments.
played.
Yeah,
Shocker.
like
He has a great
that's the
tracer.
thing.
I think did we not
even
all
said
kind of
that.
agree at that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
don't know.
but the biggest thing is I don't think that Corey was the one that actually stepped up here. For me, it was Stratus. I think Stratus was my standout player. The player that stepped up to make this not a losing Boston match.
Mm.
And I know you probably don't agree with me, but
It's not that I don't agree. I just don't remember it that way. But I think that comes
I think his
from
Sombra
me.
was just kind of nasty. There were
I
some
didn't-
points
yeah,
too where he
no.
just got, I think, some
I think his EMPs were pretty doo-doo. If I remember.
And so that was the thing, is he had a couple of really big and kind of lucky EMPs where he was even like May ulting, or he was EMPing May ults and stuff, and eating those, like, from that perspective. But yes, you're right. I think his EMPs were probably the the least impressive part, but he was
Mm.
just able to put out enough damage and pressure. And Jerry is, I think, quite clearly not a Sombra
No.
aficionado by any means.
That's another thing. If you take Paris of Sunday and put them against, or I'm sorry, not Paris. If you take Boston of Sunday and put them against Washington of Saturday, or just Washington in general, I think that they probably do better. I think they might actually beat Justice. Boston seemed like they had a way better read on what they wanted to do, or maybe what they were playing into on Sunday. And on Saturday, they kept running this like base Sombra stuff, and it's just so low damage, and it's so ultimate run and focused that if every single ultimate doesn't like consistently get you value, there's no way for you to be proactive without ults. You kind of just have to dry run, get ults. Hopefully you win that fight, and if you don't, God help you.
Yep.
So I think maybe it was a bad read. If they switch up their read and have something different, I think the game again might be a 3-2, and it might be Boston's way.
Yeah.
Jerry's not a one trick. That I think that's been concluded. He can play quite a few things
He's
so far.
Serviceable, at least.
Yeah.
It still comes down to he's not quite, and it might not be his fault, but
oh, for sure,
he
it's
/ the
not.
team around him has not quite allowed him to put up to the performance that you kind of need to be even a mid-table team in the league.
Yep. They have gems. Boston has, ways out. They just have to bring everybody else up. Like Yunbong, very solid, very good. Jerry looks to be quite a consistent staple of this team, and hopefully can continue to try to lead them to a win. That isn't Houston in map 7. But it results in everybody trying to play better. And again, I would assume that there's going to be a meta they get right that is in their favor, and they perform an upset. It's bound to happen. Again, looking at
Just
season
ban
1,
Diva. He'd probably do a lot better, honestly.
maybe, yeah. So it's bound to happen. Boston is going to get better. For how long? Tough to say. So
yeah. Let's go to Paris Eternal versus Philadelphia Fusion. This was a surprising one, to say the least, and a close one. So Paris Eternal go up 2-0, I believe, right? And then Fusion battle back, bring it to 2-2. We go to map 5. Paris Eternal win. It was so we already talked about why we don't think we saw XZ and No Smite. But let's talk about the subsequent implosion on maps 3 and 4. And this is something that we've seen now, I would say, at least once or twice a week, where a team goes up 2-0, and loses map 3 and oftentimes map 4. Why do you have any ideas? Like, is this just like small sample size coincidence? Is this coaching and teams adjusting? Is this just the fact that we're, going to a different map type? And, we've seen, the map 1 meme, or the week 1 meme was King of the Hill. Just
win control, lose the game.
Yeah, win control, lose the game. Bunch of teams won map 1, and then get 3-0'd the following 3 maps. So is this just another one of those situations? Like, what do you think is going on here?
It could be a number, like you said, a number of things. I don't think there's like a consistent like theme with any of these. And it gets more cloudy with hero pools. Okay. So to start this off, there have been teams for as long as I can remember that favor certain game modes and certain maps, right? That continues and gets more cloudy with how chaotic the meta can be and how weird the different looks tend to be within hero pools. So it's really difficult to say. It could have been the maps. It could have been an adjustment. I would have to, again, like sift through to figure out, okay, maybe what's changed. How are they being more aggressive? They're being more passive. Nothing was completely obvious to me. There were some general things that were a little obvious, and part of it came from exactly what they were running and how that really didn't fit them, versus some sort of miraculous, change that they made at halftime, or maybe it was the maps. It felt like, again, a bad read. You're putting, I think Wolf hit one major nail on the head for me, putting Ivy on a very predominantly hitscan hero when he's never really been asked to do that.
I mean,
it's tough.
What can you do? Yeah.
It's definitely not conducive to a victory. And yeah, what can you do? Because you don't have the tools. I think that's
not yet, right?
100%. Hisu would have been great, but not of age. But then what do you do? That's kind of the big question on the wall, because Philly was a good team. Why aren't they good now? Well, because the meta kind of put them in a weird spot.
Does a 3-2 loss to Paris make them not a good team?
I think in a lot of people's eyes, this moves them where I think they should be, especially after last week. I don't think they would stop being. They definitely haven't stopped being a good team, but I think this stops them from being the best team.
5-1, right? Like
totally.
Yeah,
but this already opens up a discussion of, well, what if we get another double hit scan meta? If they don't have Hisu, is Ivy going to be able to play what is demanded of him? Or do they have the brain power to come up with something else that is equally as good that fits his hero pool? I don't know. Tough to say.
I mean, they're 5-1 because they played their 5 victories outside of hero pool. Right?
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think this is just like another display where we can't really, like, power rankings don't function that way anymore. I think really teams are probability clouds where they I think that we will always be able to discern like differences in quality between like Shock and Boston. That's easy, right? I don't think it's going to be at all possible to discern between even like a top of the bottom 5 and a play-in team. I don't think there's a quality difference easily discernible because of the different meta iterations. I think we're all just like in this, it's like all very hazy and nebulous and like, like ungraspable, and like, of course, like transitive properties of going like Houston beat Paris beat Philly doesn't make sense. Also because when we look at the server, like who played or whatever, like those things don't make sense anymore. But I will also entertain the thought that Houston was actually on that weekend one of the best teams at the weekend. I'm fine with that. I don't think that's wrong. Like from what the common understanding was of what the meta is, I think Houston had one of the better executions and better reads and better gamble. Like they fell better into that meta, and
they got the card they wanted on the river.
Yes, and they probably would have also played very well against the Fusion, if not beaten them.
Yes. I think it would. I don't think I could predict, like in good faith. Like I'd have to put a lot of mustard on that hot dog. I'd have to like entertainment value that up real high. But I think you could give Houston a couple maps against Philly. Like right now, like this is they have a very strong hand with what they've been dealt.
I think they would have won this weekend.
Would you have said that beforehand though?
No.
Okay. I think there is a reality where,
because
we've seen the evidence.
So if hero pools would stay exactly the same and Houston plays Philly next weekend, do you think they'd win?
Next weekend might be a slightly different story. We'd have to look at the variables, but like if they played this weekend, I think that's
without being able to play the meta before.
Yeah, let's say this is the first time they're playing game.
Yes,
that weekend, right?
There's a chance, and
possible, right?
We only know that there's a chance because we saw them play. So it's not a prediction you can make beforehand, but after, if you try to compare the two teams, Houston looks a lot stronger than Philly does right now.
Yes. Yeah. In that
Well,
right
yeah, not
now
even
meaning
right now,
last
meaning
weekend,
this,
yeah.
this
Yes,
last week,
yes.
because now right
Yeah.
now is not right now.
It's a preview show or
Yeah.
review,
Recap.
whatever.
Yeah,
You get
review.
it.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah.
Oh man, oh, what a cluster. Jeez. All right.
And by the
so-
way, that is literally the worst team being better at a weekend than literally the best team the week before.
Yep.
And now we
would
are
you have put
arguing that
Philadelphia Fusion
Liverpool-
as the best team?
I think you have to.
I mean, just based on their records and like
And
against
they're
who they did it,
and they beat NYXL
at
for
least
it. 'Cause,
in the May meta, right? Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably make arguments that we would have to see more from Shock and Titans,
Yes. yes.
but
From
for
what
sure
we
in
saw.
the
Sure.
Atlantic,
Or Shanghai
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah.
from
Yeah.
what we've seen from the Atlantic, well, I mean, Shanghai hasn't played, so like,
Yeah,
there's
Sure.
we've seen Shock and we've seen
Vancouver.
Vancouver, but very briefly.
Yep.
And not necessarily against the most competitive teams. There's just, they might as well have not played. So of the teams that have had their, basically of the Atlantic teams, yeah, I think you'd have to put Fusion in first. And I think purely based on the fact that they beat NYXL.
Mhm.
Right? Otherwise, I
Maybe
think,
not purely, but
And
I mean-
beat everything else that got in
yeah,
front
but
of
I mean, if NYXL
yeah.
beats Fusion, I don't think that you could still
yeah,
say
that's
Fusion.
different. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Then you
So
cannot.
that's what
Yes.
I'm saying. Yeah. So if,
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
don't
that's
play, or if you take that out of it, I think you'd still say that Fusion is better than NYXL pre-Hero Pools.
Mhm.
If you take,
Yeah.
pretend that NYXL, we don't have the knowledge of NYXL and Fusion playing. Yeah. So, okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Let's talk about NYXL. NYXL versus Washington Justice. I don't think there's a whole lot to digest here. But how did you feel about this NYXL team kind of returning to some of that dive that we have come to know and love them for?
I thought it was kind of strange that they didn't play with Sabilby all that much. Obviously, I think he started, but was subbed out
I think
and
map
he
one
came in.
was his only one, and then
Yeah,
it was
I
Nene
kind of
Libero
assumed that-
the rest of the way.
I kind of assumed that he would have played more. This seems like a very good meta for him. Obviously, it's a great meta for Nene as well, but because of the environment that they're in, because of hero pools and how chaotic things are, and with how much travel, and if he's supposed to be this vocal leader, I figured this was a great time to see him, to try and keep people on track, to try and think of things on the fly, to try and really be that coach's arm that I keep trying to force him to be, but maybe he just isn't. Yeah, it's weird. I figured we'd see more of him. Glad to see Libero. And yeah.
Why
Pretty
can't
decisive.
NYXL just give us what we want? Every week, it's like, all right, here's the deal. You can have Libero now. You can have Libero.
Yeah, but we can't.
But we're
It's
taking
not
out
that I
Sabiolby.
wanted Sabiolby. I don't really want to see him. I just figured we would.
But
I like seeing Nene. I think Nene is a better player.
Yeah, I agree.
but
I also
you
also
want
think
to
he's a better
see
tracer.
Sabiolby.
Not really.
You want
He needs to probably just move into a coaching role.
You want to see Sabiolby.
Nah,
Title
not
of the
really.
show is Joe wants to see Sabiolby. That's what it is.
I couldn't care less. Yeah, I generally speaking, I think Nene's probably the better player. Sabiolby probably just needs to be a coach, and that's it.
He definitely
Hey,
still has
I'm
value
seeing-
for the team, but I agree with you. It's not as playing heroes. It's the leadership role.
Yes.
It's the yeah. I agree. But you want to see Sabiolby.
No.
Joe
It's
just
this
in
way.
IMT's DMs, just like, hey, can you show me your Sabiolby?
It would be just like saying,
please.
like, let's imagine next week's meta has a lot of Genji. I would assume you would see Who Are You. Do I want to
Yes.
see Who Are You? Not really.
Really? On Genji? Okay, now I
If
disagree.
there's somebody
wanna
somebody
see
else that can play
Sabiolby.
it better, I want to see that person.
I just want to see Sabiolby.
Yeah, but I
what
don't
it
just
is.
want to see Who Are You.
Yeah, but Who Are You? See, like Genji's the only pick. I'm convinced he's better than Liberat.
Sure. If that's the case, then I want
wanna
to see it.
that.
But I don't like, because I think somebody's going to do something doesn't mean I want
All
them
right.
to.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Not to you, John. This is more towards the YouTube comments that I'm sure will be.
True.
Yeah, but you wanted to see Sabiobi though,
But
right?
you want to see
He just,
Sabiobi.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
like they're all the same. They just want to see that Sabiobi.
That's great.
Dirty gamers.
That's really, and I will say this: Sabiobi is so healthy for Overwatch League as an esport.
Yeah, it's a good
because
personality.
it's one of the
It's more
few
entertaining.
personalities that we actually have that people
Sure.
are really excited. Like NYXL has done some of the best job in elevating their players to, I don't want to say transcend their franchise, but to transcend a franchise.
Their franchise.
Yeah. Like yeah. So it's
I think it's important to probably
just wanna
see
Sabiobi.
to have him see playtime to keep him fresh, keep him,
This is not saying Sabiobi is better. This is not saying that NYXL will win more games with Sabiobi.
no, probably lose more.
But it just means that you come like Pine.
But in terms of odds, and this is what we're playing now, we're playing odds. You want people to be fresh. You want people to be experienced. You want people to have that stage time to be able to, facilitate within that team.
Yeah. Giving
Him games when you can,
I'm gonna be
especially
honest.
against the Justice.
I'm going to be honest,
Good
this
idea.
whole Sabioli conversation got away from me, and I think I'm now making a point that I never intended to make. So, yeah.
Can I turn it around and put it on the next veteran?
True.
Manu is not looking that nice, dude.
No.
Like he was definitely always one of the elite tanks in all pretty much since he's played competitive Overwatch.
Why do you think that is?
Dude, he was. I'm not sure. Why is he turbo feeding? Like, it's
Is it because things are chaotic and messy?
in the team? Maybe the
To specify just the
you mean that?
ecosystem.
Yeah, it could be possible that Mano is one of those players that needs to refine over a longer period of time. Definitely possible. Definitely also possible that the synergy is not that there yet with like deep dives but he was definitely like some of the stuff. Main tanks always look like pretty dumb when they go in by themselves.
Oh yes, 100%.
Like slow, right? But
they
if he
look
makes
the worst
call,
when
we
they
go
underperform.
in. Like if you're the main tank and go like, okay, everyone ready? Yeah. Yep. Okay, I'm going in. 3, 2, 1. Yo, what's going on? Where are
Where's
you?
the follow-up?
Well, there was a Muma in my backline, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, then
100%.
Then that's yeah.
I do feel a lot for main tanks because that can be the case where it's not necessarily their fault that they're feeding. It just the stats say that, your eyes tell you that, but there's something intrinsic about why that happened that it's so difficult to be able to tell or know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They look the worst when they're doing poorly, and you can easily blame them. But I think almost anybody underperforming right now can be kind of excused with how chaotic hero pools are. You're again to kind of come back to the Formula One analogy. If immediately the next day you're asked to be a dirt bike racer, and then after that you're asked to be a jiu-jitsu specialist, you're going to look worse at him even if you were a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
This is such a bad analogy.
It's a great analogy. They're wildly different things.
I know, yeah, but it's just we're just gonna get killed for making these.
See, when I say
Fine,
these
good.
things, I get
I'm
the
happy about
grasshoppers, dude. Like, come on, flame him. But okay, here's a hot take. I think that's just what happened to Muma. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, we got him off Rhine. No, we got Outlaws off Rhine.
Yes.
Like, it's not that Muma is necessarily a terrible Reinhardt, and I also don't think anyone on Houston thinks that Muma is a terrible Reinhardt.
I don't think I would say terrible, but
it's more that the team doesn't play around it well, and that also translates, of course, into a player's confidence in what he can play or what kind of plays he makes.
Sure.
But I think like people who don't think his monkey is necessarily that much more transcendently better than Israel.
Does anybody remember Dive when like Houston wouldn't even play Moomon Monkey season 1?
Yeah, they would opt to catch dive. They were the kind of innovators for
like
counter dive.
It's not like Muma is known for his monkey or played it successfully in like season 1 or anything like that. Like, if I remember correctly, he was playing.
I think he played he definitely played a lot of Winston, but they were the ones to really develop the Orisa.
Maybe
Hog,
I might just be
Junkrat.
completely misremembering then. So I don't know. Send your angry emails to tactical crouch at I don't give a f.com. Yeah, I think
generally, I think I agree with the sentiment Yiska's trying to get across. I just don't know that you could convince me that his Rhine is very good.
I just don't know if you can convince me that Muma is a very good main tank. Period. I'm sorry. I just like.
I
don't know if you can say like I like Muma.
Yeah.
I just want to see Muma play. He's my Sabiobi of the Outlaws or whatever. Like, I'm just kidding.
Jesus.
I'd like to see Hydration play, to be fair.
I don't think I've ever seen. I don't ever think I've seen Muma be consistent enough and adaptive enough to play main tank well. I just don't. Like, I'm trying to think, and again, like, I don't know. Season 1's kind of a blur at this point.
No, Houston, he was just the outstanding player on.
But yeah, but was it on? He was. And again, I'm trying to remember those moments where it's like, when was he good and why was he good? And I can't place it for season 1. So I'll be honest. I just. But I just don't think he's that fantastic of a main tank.
No. If you had to judge him against all the main tanks in the league, like right now, I think he'd probably be like below 50, right? Like below that average line.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah,
not super.
I think everyone just thinks they're like.
All right, I take it back.
Puma is like terrible, like last.
Yeah.
No. I don't. Yeah, sure. I just like, and I know for a fact, and people are saying in chat, and I agree. There were points in season 1 where he was largely considered a very, very good main tank. I can't remember what he was playing at the time. I can't remember what specifically the meta stars were, the meta tea leaves or whatever that we're doing. I just remember that since that point, after that fell off, I don't think we've ever had a Muma as a top 5 blank conversation.
But like again, like it's basically the bumper discussion where some people say his way of playing Reinhardt is not even Overwatch League level, and some people say he's top 3 and it worked very well in Titans, right?
Sure.
It's like how does the puzzle piece fit type of situation. And that is not true for, like, there are definitely puzzle pieces that have 4 corners, they're their own puzzle, and they're now playing for Lucky Future, right? Like, all of them.
Yes, all of them.
That's a great one. I like that. We'll keep that one. Yeah.
But yeah, that they're definitely like, some players have that one noopsie thing that fits nicely into a team.
So then I guess the question is, if you know that going into the 3rd season you've played with him, do you not try to give him players that play within his style?
True.
Why is it within the 3rd season? You can say that season 1 he did okay or good, and then probably fell off when their style got figured out. With him playing super aggressive or them playing counter dive, is Ryan didn't look. Their goats wasn't great.
Yeah.
Is that necessarily his fault? Tough to say. But now we're going into the 3rd season of him playing, and so far, not great. Is it the people around him at that point, or is it him, or is it a mixture of both?
I also understand the staff and coaches and even players like willingness to rally around him and back him up, because I think that there's probably like a potential there that people see and have seen like in scrims and otherwise.
Sure.
I don't know if we've seen his best look, and also like the Outlaws just overall haven't been a great team. How often have you kept a player on a semi-bad, bottom 3rd team?
Totally.
and been like, and kept them all 3 years and be like, especially at the tank role,
Yep.
and be like, yeah, but this is a top tank, or whatever. Like, I just don't think that happens.
Yeah,
Or
look
try
at
to,
Sato.
like,
Sato didn't get to play season 1. He got to play at the end when his ban was up, which that's a whole nother discussion. Season 2, they completely mental boomed with goats. Now we're seeing an actually healthy Philly with a good main tank. And it just happens to be the same tank that everybody thought was completely garbage. Maybe that's the case with Muma, and this is their mental boom season. I don't know. It's tough. It's really hard to say, but if you're going to commit to somebody for 3 seasons, you have to see something.
I am also
I find it very difficult that you're just that incompetent.
I am also not married at all to the idea that Muma is not a great main tank.
Sure.
I'm just like, that's not something you can put on my tombstone. That's not something that like I'm gonna embroider on a shirt. It'd be a great shirt, by the way, to put like on your. That's what I would do if I was a championship level team that came back from like a team that won a championship that came back from like kind of an underdog status. I would like go through podcasts and articles that like shit on your players, and I would have them embroidered in championship t-shirts, and I would send them to the
a free one.
I would send them to whoever said it. Yes, I'm that spiteful.
About to start making some harsh statements and get some free clothes.
But yeah, so it's it's I don't know. I'm not married to the idea, and I have no problem being wrong about Muma. So don't even try to like spit some knowledge on YouTube. I'm just gonna delete your comment. Yeah. All right, last one. Boston Uprising versus Atlanta Reign. We're not really gonna talk about Uprising.
There's not really much to talk about with that match.
There isn't, except that we saw Atlanta again, and we saw a different look. And the first one was at DPS. We saw Edison in completely for Baby Bay, whereas we just saw Baby Bay, I think, previously. Did we see Edison on one map before?
No,
I'm not sure.
Not to my.
I can't remember,
Sure
but
just Baby
we'll
Bay.
just say Baby Bay
Because Yiska was malding about it.
Yeah. So we saw. So Yiska, since you were malding about it, how did you feel about Edison Erster?
Edison.
Versus Baby Bay Erster.
This week. Yeah, I mean it was nice. It's like it's kind of, let's be honest, that match is just like, watching a good boxer that could fight for the title spar some guy from the streets.
It's the first match of a Rocky sequel.
Yeah, exactly.
Has to fight, for
the
his
undercard.
kids. Yeah, to keep food on the table. But yeah, I'm glad that we saw something like that. But yeah, generally, yeah, I okay. I didn't pay that much attention to that match.
I didn't either, dude.
This was late at night. These matches don't stick out to me anyway. Like there's nothing really that my mind attaches to. Which also explained my blunder about Fate earlier. But
happens.
It's that's just like I watched the first map. It's cheeks being clapped. I surf while watching the match, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really debate that topic. I was also playing another game, watching this match. Like, even if it wasn't hero pools, this match probably would not be very interesting to watch.
True.
Even with Edison coming in, it's tough to even give him any credit because this is a what we assume is going to be a top tier team versus Boston.
Yeah.
It really might as well be a scrim. It really might as well just be another contenders team that they're just kind of beating up on. I want to see them. They're going to have a very interesting week next week, but we'll get into that on Wednesday. That'll be a lot more indicative of exactly where they're at, where their heads are at, who's playing what, how they're playing against, actual opponents. Sure. That'll be super interesting and very fun to talk about.
So, maybe the answer is going to be the same then for the tanks because Atlanta has given us 3 very different looks at the tank lineup position. So against Toronto, we saw Poke Gator. And then Paris, we saw Pokebo Hawk. And this past week, we saw Gator Hawk, who both come from Atlanta Academy, correct? Like that was their
Gator
tag
Hawk,
duo,
yep.
right?
Gator Hawk, yes.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I wasn't.
It's all good.
that pitcher, Yiska. Every time he takes a drink,
Yeah, you just
from
I think somebody in chat did ask if that's like a Brita filter.
It is.
It is. It's just with the top off of it. Yeah.
You just too lazy to put it in a cup.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
It
even.
also it doesn't fill that, like disk space.
Disk space.
Disk space, yeah.
Well,
do
there's
you mean
also
disk
like,
space?
have you ever walked around with like a
it takes-
jug? Like, like a lot of like weightlifters and people who are like really active walk around with like a big gallon jug of water. When I was doing wrestling, we walked around with a gallon jug of water and you drank right from that because it helped you like manage your progress. It's one thing to have 8 16-ounce glasses of water. It's another thing to have just 1 gallon jug that you know how far through it you are.
Yep.
I get it. All right.
I just have it by my PC every time, like fill it up in the morning and want to get through it by the time I'm going to bed. That's pretty much right.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
Race to mayhem.
Back to the Atlanta Reigns tank looks.
Yeah.
So we
Gator
saw
Hawk.
those 3. Any insights into this tank shuffle at all? Like, do we know why we're seeing it? Like, is it spreading playtime? Is there some sort of dynamic thing that they're doing it? I personally think that they're just testing out some different looks. Combined with like, let's just not do something like obviously against the meta, but like let's give some different looks here. They've got 3 strong tanks.
Agreed. I think it's just like try not styles, right? That's what's happening. They were doing that in preseason already. They distinct play styles that these front lines each play. It's probably a good idea in the hero pool situation to have one meta assigned for, or like, especially in these warm-up games, basically, to just keep everyone in check. I don't mind that as much. Like, it's not, to me, it's not really the Sebiobi Nene situation, because no game was seriously threatened by it. And I think Pokebo is also more capable tank than Sebiobi is a DPS at this point. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of very plausible reasons that you would want to. Maybe it is trying to keep everybody fresh, giving them game time. This isn't a match that I think you could even try to lose, or you'd have to try very hard to lose. Like somebody would have to be like playing with their feet, which has happened in esports. Don't even come for me, YouTube chat. That has happened.
True.
Somebody has tried. Somebody has won and has played and won playing with their feet. So
I think they would have disqualified for that. Wasn't that such a scandal or something like that?
I don't think so, but maybe we're talking about 2 different things.
Yeah, maybe.
It could be that in this particular meta, Gator and Hawk have more synergy on the heroes that need to have synergy or want to have synergy.
That's actually a really good point. Like, if you are adding the additional variable, right, of hero pools, familiarity is probably
Plays a lot.
bonus.
Definitely.
Right? Like it shouldn't hurt you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No,
So,
not at all.
Yeah.
So it could be a mix of a lot of different things. It's tough to kind of give them one out. I don't know that there will be any very clear opinions or topics with hero pools at the moment, until we get like a vast number of sample sizes to kind of really figure out like,
And competitive teams.
Sure, 100%. Because Atlanta has not had the strongest strength of schedule as of their debut. So yeah, it's a tough to say exactly where they are. I still think they're probably a better team than people probably give them credit for, just on their face and looking at their record. I think they're very well prepared. I think they're very solid. They're strong. Their tank line's very good. They have a deep DPS roster. They have a deep everything. Their whole roster is deep. yeah, this probably will be a good team by the end of the season and probably will make playoffs without being in play-ins. Still.
So you're not throwing in the towel yet on Atlanta based on their loss to Paris.
Yeah, no, I think that was just a misjudgment of how good Paris was.
Yeah.
Because I think if you progress in a non-hero pool world, I think people come around to the idea that Paris was better than Philly.
Yeah, that's true.
We just did not have a good read on them because they didn't have Hanbin week 1. That kind of skewed data. So everybody could go back and try to, there are legs to that argument to say, well, they weren't good then. Why does one player necessarily jump them that high, put them at such a high ranking?
So
that's going to happen again. That's the scary part. They're going to get Sparkle in. So if they can integrate him in, imagine what this team can do.
So Boston though. Okay. Boston really quick. They're trying to jam Orisa Sigma in this meta. They've been trying to jam it the whole time.
Jam them cards.
Why? Like, if you had to guess why they're trying to do this, is this a stylistic thing? Are they not confident in their diva? Do they think that this is their best chance of winning? Like, if you had to, I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you $100 if you try and give me your best answer to this.
I think the answer is they kind of feel they gotta do something wacky at this point, right? Like,
I don't think that that's wacky though. I don't think that that's like too far off.
Really?
No, not to be considered like cheese. I don't think. I think it still like plays within like a framework that people are pretty like used to. I don't see that their style looking completely and vastly different. Obviously, like certain picks can facilitate like a brand new style, but it doesn't seem like Sigma's that character. So I think there's less of an argument to be had that they're trying to cheese people or trying to do something like off meta. I think you could say that the bunker style was technically off meta, but even then, that's up for debate. It was very clear that certain teams did think that bunker was better, and certain teams thought dive was better. Tough to argue that as well. I think there are arguments on both sides. But in terms of Sigma, I think Mineral has come out at least at one of the press conferences and said that it felt like he was trying to point towards like some sort of frontline pressure, gives you an extra shield versus like the Soldier 76 comps. You have hard CC versus dive, so it's good into that, but it is very slow. I just don't see why Diva couldn't do that as well. Like Diva isn't great. It's good into dive, but it's not like fantastic. I just don't know that Sigma is that much better. Diva is also very good at busting tanks and bursting shields and being very mobile. I think Diva is probably just a better pick. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to chalk that up, the Sigma discussion, to just a bad read. Just like how they had a bad read on the DPS players, or not the DPS players, but the heroes that they were playing. I really didn't like the May Sombra. Florida, if I remember correctly, tried to run something very similar last year when they were really trying to look for some sort of win. They ran a lot of May Sombra, and it's just so slow. It's a strong engine, and what I mean by engine is when you build an EMP and you don't have Blizzard, it builds your Blizzard because EMP is such a strong team fight ultimate, right? So it engines into Snowball or Blizzard. Blizzard EMP or builds into EMP. That EMP builds into your next Blizzard, and you start to get that engine rolling. The problem occurs when your engine breaks and you miss your serve, right? I like the Benchmob's analogy all the time, especially in GOATS, is breaking somebody's serve and getting that tempo to disrupt. Once you break the engine, it's hard to get it back on. It's hard to turn because now you have two of the same ultimates. You're not generating the ult of the other. You're not generating charge on the other.
I understand what you mean.
You see what I'm saying?
And there's a few comps that run that way. Yeah, that are very I would say are tempo or momentum based. We've seen.
Oh yeah, there are a ton of comps that are super momentum based.
Like that. We've seen Symmetra, where it's like you can run Symmetra until she dies, and then you got to get off. I think we've seen it with Doomfist a couple times too, where It's like you can
Far back in the day,
yeah,
super hard to recontest.
This concept of like, feeding your team, and when you're winning, you're compounding on that, and you should maximize your time doing that. And then once it stops working, switch, because you're not going to have success from the low ground. You're not gonna. You're Anakin at this point, and yeah.
Give yourself the grasshoppers.
Okay. All right. We good?
Like, I feel like there's a grasshopper bias on this podcast. I'm not gonna lie. You both had way more atrocious comments than I
I
did.
used your metaphor.
Yeah, but you didn't read the temperature of the room and didn't realize it wasn't cool
Are you
anymore.
tone policing me, sir?
Jeez.
Dude, you somehow aged 20 years in the span of an hour.
You already knew that happened years ago.
All right, we're done. We're out of here. We're done. Chat, thanks for being here. Hope you had fun. We went a little long on this one. So you're welcome. Unless you wanted a shorter podcast, in which case, you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
Gremlins.
We do have a couple of new patrons, don't we, Yiska?
Yes. And their
Their
names
names
are
are
Eric F. That was dangerous. That could have been something. Okay. Thanks, Eric F. And Daniel S. for the new patronage. Patronage?
Patronage.
Does that change? Is it not patronage?
Patronus, don't patronize us. But yeah, thanks for supporting the show. We're getting close to the 500 bucks goal. And by the way, like, I think we also would have to probably plan a game night in the next 2 weeks, because the last week of the March,
I have to figure out a day.
I committed. I think I committed to have an announcement on this podcast, but we're gonna do it on the next one. We're gonna
Maybe the
determine
post show. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. You'll know.
Joe, what about 5-star iTunes reviews?
Coming in with a hot and fresh 5-star iTunes review is Krusty Santa MLG from the United States of America. So thank you for the 5-star iTunes review. It really helps us out in terms of the algorithm and all that nerdy stuff. Thank you so much for promoting us and helping us climb the old iTunes charts. I do remember at least part of the comment, and I think we're kindred spirits, me and Krusty Santa MLG. I have a feeling that we may have the same opinions, but maybe I'm wrong.
You're also both 60-year-old
maybe
Midwestern women.
It's possible.
Jesus. All right. And of course, again, a big thank you to our patron producers: Battle Crab Pin Lotion, Charlie L, Audio Compass, Pork Chop Sammy, Kasha 67, Coochie Kopi, Salsa Boy 91. Thank you so much for your incredible support of the show. Other than that, individual shout outs for the week and where people can find you. Yiska, go.
As always, Yiska Ouch. Hopefully my arrangements go through in terms of being able to like really churn out content, and I will split it a little bit with the Valorant, but so I can like really full-time pump out content, and I've been slacking admittedly a little bit recently. Other than that, Yiska Out as always. Hang out, like we've built this little click in on Discord when we're watching, and even though people like start out strong in terms of the numbers, and then eventually with our let's call it
we just devolve into
Did you
degenerates.
just mute?
He might have.
Did he just?
I think he's self-muting.
Oh
I
my
think this is
god, I pressed the wrong button. I wanted to beep, but I muted.
He muted instead of beeped.
So
I was just like, what?
yeah, no, the we gotta get a good thing going when we're not
Yes.
being overly cynical. And if you want to hang out, join discord.me/Yiska out. Just hang out. Otherwise, my Twitter, as always, twitter.com/Yiska out.
You scout everywhere. Everywhere. Joe, what about you, man?
Yeah, it's same thing this week. You can find me everywhere at Volamel. That's Volamel. Alternate Overwatch history should be coming out either today or tomorrow. These games kind of killed a little bit of the motivation. Took a lot more time than I expected them to. So that's a little late. Regardless, that's coming though. Articles for this week, probably trying to judge who's good and what is going to be played for this specific hero pool, which we'll probably get into on Wednesday. And yeah, who knows? Might be more videos, might be less videos, and then we'll figure out other content. But stay tuned.
Nice. That's me. You can find me everywhere at KickedTripod. No supplementary content coming out. I think we're going to break out our Hero Pools conversation, upload it separately on YouTube for people to delve into.
Sure.
Delve further. And yeah, besides that, nothing big. Got a new job. Friday is my last day at my existing one, so I'm really excited about it. It's like a dream job for me. So more to come on that when I can talk more about it. Other than that, follow me everywhere at KickedTripod, Twitch, YouTube, Twitter. That's also where the show is posted. YouTube.com/KickedTripod, Twitch.tv/KickedTripod. Other than that, we're out of here, chat. We'll see you on Wednesday for the Week 6 preview. Until then, stay frosty or something. I don't know. Stay frosty.